Welcome into another edition of New Track Record. Caleb Hatch and Justin Kinney with you. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Caleb. How are you?
Doing well, and we have a ton to get to on this week's episode because, well, we have the recap of the doubleheader at Iowa, the Hy-Vee.com 250 won by Joseph Newgarden. What was that? Presented by DoorDash, right? Yeah.
That one was DoorDash. The second one was Google.
Hy-Vee Salute to Farmers 300 presented by Google, won by Pato Award at Iowa Speedway last weekend. Plus, the latest on the Alex Palou contract drama, another silly season update, and we get you set for IndyCar racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course this weekend for the Gallagher Grand Prix. But before we do all that, we had the chance to talk with Nick Yeoman of IndyCar Radio earlier this week to talk about Iowa and the championship chase in IndyCar. Nick Yeoman of the IndyCar Radio Network joining us. Nick, good afternoon.
Caleb, Justin, good to be with you guys as always. Hope everything's good there in Fort Wayne.
Everything is going swimmingly here in Fort Wayne. And Nick, I assume you're back from Iowa Speedway from over the weekend. But first off, let's just start off. What an absolute amazing event that Hy-Vee put on in conjunction with Penske Entertainment for this doubleheader weekend. They had those amazing suites. They had great concerts. Everything was put together. This feels like kind of the future of successful race promotion in motorsports.
Kind of laid the blueprint, didn't it? Yeah, I mean, it was just successful across the board, and I think this is what it takes these days. There is just so many different things, you know, whether it be from a sports or music or entertainment, the internet standpoint of things that can preoccupy our time, that you've got to kind of think outside the box, and if you're going to have an event, you've got to build it up and appeal to as many people as possible. So you're right. I mean, the concerts and the money dumped in by the Hy-Vee supermarket chain was just impressive. And it really pumped a lot of life back into this Iowa weekend, which, you know, before it popped off the schedule a couple years ago, the crowd seemed to be dwindling. They would move the race date around. Some years it was a night race. Some years it was during the day. And it just kind of got shuffled in the mix on the IndyCar schedule. It came back full force. And I'm hopeful that, you know, we've brought some new fans to the racetrack who maybe didn't know anything about IndyCar racing. We're there to see Gwen Stefani or Tim McGraw or Blake Shelton, and maybe they walked away intrigued and became fans. That's always the hope. But above all, I mean, it felt like going in, it was a big weekend for the sport, and by far it certainly delivered. Big crowds, good racing, and I think everybody walked away pretty excited with how it went.
Nick, any indication from Hy-Vee's side in terms of what they wanted to accomplish this weekend, whether it was activation, whether it was social media presence, whether it was just, you know, added, you know, profile in everyone's minds in terms of their product and their grocery chain? What did they want to accomplish? And do you feel, or maybe this is too early, do you feel that they were able to accomplish what they set out to do?
Yeah, well, my understanding from the get-go is Hy-Vee's involvement in the sport and with this weekend was kind of their way. They want to branch out. It's a grocery chain located around Iowa and surrounding states, and I know they want to kind of push to be a more national brand. So this was kind of their way of dipping their toe in it. To your point, it is probably a little too early. I think we're all hopeful that in time they will see some return on that investment. But right now it's impossible to know. I mean, they dumped a ton of money. I heard up around $10 million, and the celebrities that they brought in with the concerts and everything. I mean, clearly they gave it their best effort along with everyone with Penske. So, I know that's their goal. Is they're looking to expand their reach across the country and doing it by getting involved with a sports league and putting on events like that. Traditionally, that's been the way to do it, and we'll see in 2022 if that holds true.
Nick Yeoman joins us. Did not expect to see Mark Wahlberg there. That one threw me for a loop.
Yeah, for sure. He was down there. I know he's been to some IndyCar races in the past. I think he waved the green flag at the 500 a handful of years ago, but that was kind of a late addition there to be the Grand Marshal for race number 2. So, yeah, that kind of star power is cool. In fact, honestly, if you look at with him being there and all the concerts, I think the celebrity list might have been more impressive for this Iowa weekend than what we've seen in recent years for the Indy 500. So, certainly they did it up big this weekend, and it really gave the entire weekend a pretty important field.
Nick, let's go back to the racing. Both days dominated by Joseph Newgarden, but a late crash on Sunday afternoon. Possibly something broke on the car, so he's able to walk away, but then unfortunately fell after fainting and cut his head, had to be airlifted to the hospital. He's since been released. Is there any update on his status ahead of this weekend's race at IMS?
Not as of yet. I know right now he'll have to clear IndyCar's protocol and get cleared and to be able to race. And Team Penske has already kind of put into play a backup plan just in case he is not, by reaching out to Santino Ferrucci, who's kind of been a super sub in many respects, done a really nice job no matter who he's driven for. But, as of right now, just a very bizarre situation. I actually spoke with Joseph at the Infield Care Center after he crashed, and it was a big hit, and he admitted it. But visually, from my standpoint, he seemed okay. Obviously, checked and released from the Infield Care Center moments prior to the satisfaction of IndyCar. So, unaware of right now. Can't wait to hear from Joseph at whether or not he was just dehydrated or maybe this was a kind of delayed reaction of the concussion. But it sounds like he fell on the bus lot, hit his head, and got a pretty big abrasion on the back of his head. So a very scary situation, and obviously hoping for the best for a guy who is in the midst of a championship run. I mean, he's just 34 points out of the championship, so it would be almost a death blow if he's not able to race this weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But as of right now, we're going to have to wait and see to see just how healthy and if he gets cleared by the sport.
Nick, you talk about him being in the thick of the championship, and yes, he has 4 wins on the season and probably should have had 5, obviously, until that failure Sunday. Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of the focus, though, for Joseph has been on the what-ifs and what could have beens this year and not the race wins itself.
Yeah, and that's crazy, right? I mean, and I think that's a lot. We're going to find out. I mean, whether a championship can be won when you get hot and you win 5, 6, 7 races, but you're very inconsistent. I kind of look at Pato O'Ward, the driver who ended up winning yesterday. He's kind of in the same boat where he's been really good at times with race wins and podiums, but has also had some DNFs, and he's right there in the championship hunt. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got guys like Marcus Ericsson and Scott Dixon who, have only won 1 race each, but consistently week in, week out, they're running in the top 5 or 6. They're more than one way to skin a cat. That's for darn sure. But for Joseph, it's going to be about finding the consistency and trying to avoid, the mistakes that haunt you and rip away points. I don't think this one was necessarily on him. It certainly looked like something failed on that race car, some sort of broken suspension part that sent him in the wall, because there was no doubt, I think, in anyone's mind he was going to win that race and really kind of put his stamp on what was a dominant weekend. But for sure, it's the consistency that he's needed to find if he's going to try to grab a 3rd championship.
Nick, it's the old, two contracts, 1 driver gag. Latest with Alex Palou, any additional fallout, rumors, discussion, tense moments, awkward moments from the weekend?
No, I wish there was, man. This has just been one of the weirdest stories I think I've ever seen with the sport. I talked a bit with Alex on Friday before practice, and he said, there's nothing really to report. So as of right now, he is still being claimed by multiple teams heading into next season. It's just really interesting how it's going to play out. Chip Ganassi has him under contract, picked up an option year, and then he made the move. Alex did, that he wants to move on to McLaren, and it's going to get messy. But every day, every week, I hope to hear a little more information to come out. But as of right now, I think there's still a lot of debate about how this is going to play out.
Yeah, you're with us, Nick. There's some people out there, it's, unnecessarily drama and it's not good to grow new fans. It's great. I think looking at McLaren, and you mentioned McLaren, they play by a whole different set of rules than everybody else in the IndyCar paddock because they have a clear path to Formula One, and you can dangle that carrot in front of any driver that hasn't been there, that wants to get there. And, some people can say it makes them the villain. They can play by different rules, but I think it shakes up the paddock in a lot of ways that we haven't seen in quite some time in the sport.
Well, and it's big for drivers. It's big for the driver market in the standpoint that McLaren's coming in with a big budget too. Like, they can throw around some big dollars, which, quite frankly, the IndyCar driver salaries have kind of been stagnant over the last decade, if not have dropped compared to what drivers were making maybe in the 90s and early 2000s. So all of a sudden you got this team that comes over from the Formula One world, and they want to get involved in IndyCar and start throwing their weight around. And I'm with you. I think it's made it interesting. And honestly, I like it when there are multiple sides in competition that don't like each other. And by all indications, Chip Ganassi and Zach Brown, who's kind of the head figure there with McLaren, there is no love between those two. So we will see who ultimately gets their hands on the 2022 IndyCar or 2021 IndyCar champion Alex Palou. But it certainly sounds like there are going to be some court disputes and maybe some buyouts if Alex Palou is going to end up leaving Chip Ganassi Racing.
Speaking of Chip Ganassi Racing, Nick, Jimmie Johnson had his best weekend in IndyCar by far over the weekend. 11th on Saturday after leading a handful of laps, was running pretty strong until he faded late, and then 5th place on Sunday that included battling with his teammates at Ganassi, Scott Dixon and Marcus Ericsson, a fierce battle with Ericsson late in the race. You could see his confidence go up between Saturday and Sunday, running that high line over the weekend, and this was kind of the racing I think we expected Jimmy to have coming on the ovals. I guess we did not expect it to be at a track like Iowa Speedway where he's not raced before.
Yeah, but it's just really nice to see. It's good for Jimmie Johnson. It's good for his fans. Listen, he's taken a lot of punches because it has not gone well on the road and street circuits. I mean, by and large, week in, week out, Jimmy's in the bottom 2 or 3 in the sport. Lots of mistakes and spins on the road courses, but this was more in his wheelhouse. I mean, he has 686 NASCAR Cup Series starts. I venture to guess probably 640 of them were on ovals. And you look at the IndyCar field, we only run 2, 3, 4 ovals every year. So this was where Jimmie Johnson's experience could really shine. And I think he brought that confidence into this weekend. And he said that racing at Iowa Speedway with the banking compared to maybe the more flatter Indianapolis Motor Speedway or a little bit later this year, when we go to St. Louis to Worldwide Technology Raceway, the banking of Iowa Speedway is a little bit more what he's used to racing in NASCAR. So he was able to define that confidence very quickly, and I think really strong for him to show that, like, hey, it may not be going well on road and street circuits, but he's not a hack. He can still get it done. He's still strong, and I know everyone very happy with how things went for Jimmie Johnson this past weekend.
And Nick, in fact, you talking about him getting a strong result, he's going to one of the few road and street courses where he has a ton of experience on, the IMS road course, where he's raced, 3 times already in his young IndyCar career. Is this a weekend where maybe we could see more of a breakthrough result for him for a best road and street course finish?
Man, I'd love to say so, but I just don't think it's going to happen for him on the road and street circuit. He does a nice job oftentimes of taking care of the race cars, and when he does have those spins, they're ultimately not race-ending ones. But there's just a lot of ground to be made up, and it's I think a lot harder to find those tenths and hundredths of a second, to make up. And all of a sudden you look at how stacked this IndyCar field is, and for him to break into and find a top 10 on a road course, all of a sudden he's got to be faster than guys like Colton Herta and Will Power and Scott Dixon. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I think it's the results for Jimmie Johnson are going to strictly be when IndyCar goes to ovals. But with every race and every track that he gets to visit more and more times, you're right. Conventional wisdom would say that he's going to get stronger. But, boy, I just think the curve is so strong to be able to compete with some of these guys who have been racing on road and street circuits for so long, and they know how far you can dive into the braking zones, and they've got a feel for when you can pick up the throttle at corner exit. That's the thing that takes a long time to figure out, and it's going to take years, I think, for Jimmy to be really competitive on road and streets.
Nick, we're in the middle of a long summer streak of races, and after this week and next week at Nashville, there's only 3 races to go for the season. When we look at the championship standings and how things are trending with 5 races to go, if you had to pick, sir, who has the inside edge on winning this championship?
Well, at about the midway point of yesterday, I would have said Joseph Newgarden. He's looked poised to win another race, and I think probably would have taken over the points lead, or at least would have been right there with Marcus Ericsson, and his experience and being able to close on championships the last handful of years would have given him the nod. But obviously there's so much up in the air of if he'll even be able to race this weekend that kind of, lets me shy away for maybe picking Joseph Newgarden. Will Power has been incredibly consistent and is a guy that has probably thrown away more championships than he has won in his career. But as he gets older, certainly has things figured out. Marcus Ericsson's just the one wild card, and I just can't figure out if Marcus Ericsson's simply going to, finish top 5s and top 6s for the rest of the season, not win another race and win a championship. He might do that. He's been that consistent. He's just not very flashy. And then you've got some heavy hitters there that are about 34, 36 points back, and guys like Scott Dixon, who's looking for his 7th, and Pato O'Ward, who has shown that, he can get hot and get fast just about any racetrack that we go to. So it's going to be a great championship battle. I think there's 6 drivers, if you want to throw in Alex Palou, that I think mathematically still have a chance at this thing with 5 races to go, and all 6 of them I think are capable of winning each and every week, getting hot, and winning a championship. So it's going to be a lot of fun down the stretch, and I don't think I could pick a favorite right now.
Cop-out answer.
Yeah, I know. I know.
All right, Nick, before we let you go, are you doing double duty this weekend for IndyCar Radio, and also is it PRN this weekend for the NASCAR side?
Yeah, man, it's going to be an awesome weekend. I think it's great that IndyCar and NASCAR have seen the value of, hey, let's share a weekend at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and try to get as many fans out to experience both sides of North America's top motorsports series. So, yeah, excited to call the NASCAR Xfinity Series race and the IndyCar Series race on Saturday, and then the Cup event on Sunday on the road course. It's cool. It's kind of a blended crew for those that enjoy listening to motorsports on the radio. You're going to hear some IndyCar radio voices. You're going to hear some folks from the Performance Racing Network that cover about half the NASCAR schedule. It's a lot of fun, and we're really looking forward to it and hope to see a lot of folks out at the racetrack.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Hey, no problem, guys. Take care.
Always good stuff from Nick. Always great to talk with him. And
always brings the energy as well. Love Yeoman.
Time for our 3 things from the doubleheader weekend at Iowa, and I think we can both kind of consolidate at least one of these, because I think the number one takeaway from the entire weekend was just Hy-Vee and their promotion and how successful of an event this was. You have everything they put into it, reports of $10 million
invested in it, yeah.
Thousands of dollars of in-market advertising, a $35,000 food truck contest that they had going on. Obviously, the concerts, Florida Georgia Line, Tim McGraw, Gwen Stefani, Blake Shelton, that got a lot of fans of those music acts to Iowa Speedway who may not be interested in IndyCar. You had Mark Wahlberg on hand for the
Grant
Command.
Marshall on, was it Sunday?
Sunday, I think.
Yeah.
So overall, this was an excellent event. Sold out for Saturday, 38,000. I think close, if not to sold out, for Sunday's race as well. So you're getting nearly 40,000 people both days getting in front of IndyCar. And I would say the race Saturday was solid. The race Sunday, it had some intrigue after Joseph Newgarden crashed. But, I mean, overall, an incredible event and great job by Hy-Vee.
From beginning to end of the weekend, from free Friday to letting everybody in free, to the presentations of Saturday, Sunday, the semi-permanent suites that were made available. It was a great weekend for IndyCar, great weekend for Hy-Vee, great weekend for Iowa Speedway. I think a lot of people think, okay, how do we do this elsewhere? But I just feel like it's a unique partnership between Hy-Vee and IndyCar and Iowa Speedway that I don't think is necessarily replicated as easy as people like to think. I think Iowa Speedway has always been a great place for IndyCar racing, continues to be, with multiple lanes on a short track. That's just not realistic in a lot of other ovals. I feel companies willing to drop 8 figures on promotions for an IndyCar weekend is not as many as you'd think. And I feel the region, too, is starved, and we had a lot of support from local and regional governments as well, too. So it's a perfect storm that has worked out for Iowa, and it should be celebrated, and hopefully it continues into the future, at least this type of activation. But I think it's very difficult to replicate this elsewhere as easy as people like to think it is.
Yeah, you have to have a partner that's all in, and Hy-Vee was clearly all in on this weekend. I mean, the attention to detail on everything, just from reading different anecdotes about what the volunteers wearing the red shirts, I mean, there are Hy-Vee employees that were volunteering. They had those little pop-up markets for the campgrounds and for fans to go into, and shipping containers that they turned into mini grocery stores. They did some things that other sponsors probably couldn't do that catered to fans and made the weekend even more successful.
And one of the fascinating things that I learned, and we both learned in Racer.com's article, Marshall Pruitt, about the formulation of this past weekend was the fact that Bud Denker and IndyCar had already come to an agreement with NASCAR to rent Iowa Speedway for multiple seasons before Hy-Vee entered the picture. It was almost coinciding and had nothing to do with each other, with Graham Rahal reaching out to Bud Denker and saying, hey, I have a sponsor in Hy-Vee that's really interested in activating at a larger level, series-wide level. And Bud Denker was like, hey, what a coincidence, because we just made a deal with NASCAR to return to Iowa in a rental capacity. So this wasn't something that came together where Hy-Vee was saying, hey, this would be great. And Iowa said, okay, Hy-Vee's in, and IndyCar said both. It was very much IndyCar first, renting the facility, and then immediately after, it all falling into place with Hy-Vee. So credit to all involved. Great weekend. Really good couple of races as well. I think the big thing is there's not very many IndyCar races outside of the Indianapolis 500 in which there's a lot of people that come that have never been to a race before and are not really interested in racing. I think we read close to 50% of people that attended the weekend at Iowa had never been to an IndyCar race before. And we look at ways that NASCAR is trying to tap into that market. They were able to do that with the LA Coliseum Clash. They're looking to do that with Chicago Street Race starting next year. How does IndyCar match that in terms of unique events to bring in fans that otherwise wouldn't attend a race? This was a perfect combination. You bring country fans in to see the concerts, and if some of them are entertained and come back for another race or tune in for a race, then it's a success.
I think that's the goal. And they said 60% of the people who bought tickets from out of the state of Iowa. So you're getting people, and yes, you're getting a lot of people coming from the Indianapolis area and Indiana as a whole who are IndyCar fans, but you're able to draw from beyond just the Des Moines area in Iowa as a whole. And part of that's, like you said, because the concerts where you get half the ticket sales for the concerts. And that's great. Look, you have 30,000 people approximately show up for the Snake Pit at the Indy 500, and no one's saying that's a bad thing.
No one cares there's a race going on. It's just the ambiance of race cars going around while listening to music. So, yeah, it's a great point, because none of those people, hardly any of them, are coming for the Indianapolis 500 racing event. They're there for the Snake Pit event. So, by and large, just great event. And now you look towards year two. How do they improve it? The heat was kind of an issue on Saturday. We read some stuff about that and people struggling to stay cool. Positive thing, you could go to your car and come back. There were pass outs. Once you were in the racetrack, stuck there for the duration. So a lot of things went well. How do they build upon it at Iowa and elsewhere? I would say stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll see if they can find something that is next, with an event like this. And look, there are obvious examples you can point to bring back loved events, whether it's Meyer and Michigan International Speedway, whether it's the Milwaukee Mile and Menards. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, Kroger and Kentucky Speedway.
Yeah.
I mean, these are natural fits you think of right off the bat.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's going to happen, because look, I don't have a clue, but IndyCar can approach partners in a more in a different way. It's not just slapping your name on the name of the race and X number of tickets that you get out of the deal. It's an immersive marketing and experiential thing. It's not just paying money and signing a check to be a title sponsor.
You need the right situation with the right company. So Hy-Vee, they're trying to go national, right? They're regional now. They're going to work towards going national. So this type of investment makes sense in terms of what their business goals are. So you need to find other companies that are trying to grow their footprint and look at IndyCar as an advantageous thing to invest their money in to try to grow their brand. And I feel like that's easier said than done, but it's better to have one of those partners than none of those partners. And maybe this grows into a thing. Maybe in a couple of years, you approach Hy-Vee and say, hey, you want to grow in the Florida area. You're trying to expand into the Southeast. We're trying to get a race
back at Homestead. Would you be interested in going mega there, or at least some form of mega like they do at Iowa? So
Publix.
Yeah, Publix is down there. I shop at Publix all the time when I'm on spring breaks down there. So it's exciting. It's a new way. I feel that IndyCar can take advantage of different markets. We'll see how they use the momentum out of last weekend to potentially create another couple events this way. And look, it's a lot easier to do that when it's a road and street course. The fact that they were able to do this on an oval is all the more impressive. And, maybe IndyCar can find another willing one or two partners to do this at an oval elsewhere. Texas, looking at you.
Yeah, Texas and what? HEB? Just throwing
whatever it
there.
takes.
Yeah, whatever it takes. All right, let's skip ahead to our second takeaways. I'll let you go first.
I'll take Jimmy Johnson because I know that's probably on your top three lineup. But, credit to Jimmy Johnson. Did a great job. When he spun at the start of race one, I chuckled. And I was watching it on delay, and you said, just patience. It was two really good drives for Jimmy Johnson. He did set the trend on Saturday for that high line that was almost dangerously close to the marbles. And we saw on Sunday more drivers going up there to race where Jimmy was racing on Saturday. So it fit his wheelhouse in terms of his background and racing on ovals and being able to find what works. I've never said that he can't be a competent racer on ovals. It's just, unfortunately, there aren't very many on the schedule, but he took advantage of the opportunity over the weekend and a couple really good showings by Jimmy.
Yeah, 11th in race one, led a handful of laps. 5th in race two, where he was legitimately battling and passing Marcus Ericsson, the championship leader, his teammate. And they raced hard. I mean, it was clean, but it was hard.
Yeah.
And it was a very impressive showing by him because, like you said, he ran the high line. He figured that out early. And then on Sunday, he kind of had to work around that because everyone realized, okay, he proved you can do it. So he had to work around that. But overall, I think to me, what was impressive is, yes, I get that it's an oval. It's going to be more in his comfort zone. This is a track he's never ran at before.
True.
Like, he's not been to Iowa Speedway running in NASCAR. So his results, I was very impressed. And he even had some decent qualifying efforts as well. So 15th race one, but in race two, 13th. I mean, he was mid-pack qualifying. Overall, it was a great weekend for him, his best weekend in an IndyCar.
It was, and he kind of compared it to Bristol and how it raced in terms of the lines and all that stuff and where you could go on track. And, when we talked to Nick Yeoman earlier in the podcast, he kind of said he doesn't, and I feel the same way. I don't think Jimmy Johnson's ever going to be comfortable on road and street courses. His background isn't in it. He has limited time in open wheel. It wasn't like he even came up racing open wheel. So he doesn't really have that basis of knowledge to fall back on. But in terms of ovals, I feel like he can be a guy that I don't know if he's ever in a position to get a win on an oval in IndyCar, but I think he can run consistently top 10. And for that, I think he should be applauded because it fits his mold of driving and his career a lot better than going left, right on road and streets.
My second takeaway, I'm going to go with Team Penske as a whole because they were just dominant this weekend, and we knew they would be.
Sure.
I have to gloat because I picked Newgarden and Pato Award to win
yes,
the
look
races.
At you.
So we've actually done a good job on picking the winner this season. I think we each probably have 4 or 5 that we've gotten correct.
Shockingly.
But Team Penske as a whole, Will Power swept the polls. First time that's been done since 2013. That was Simon Pagenaud at Detroit, I believe. Then you look at Scott McLaughlin, who had an issue on Saturday, was running well until that, but then a podium in race 2. So overall, I mean, it was just a dominant performance. Yes, Joseph Newgarden obviously he would have liked to have swept the weekend, and that was looking likely until that damper failure that happened late in race 2. But overall, they came in, they knew they were the favorite, they showed out, and it was a great result for the team. For Newgarden, unfortunately, it was another boom or bust weekend where you had both between the two races, and unfortunately, that's probably going to come back to bite him in the championship in the long run. as kind of Nick alluded to earlier. But overall, great weekend for Team Penske, and they've been dominant all season. This is just a continuation of that.
They have, you look at the Indianapolis 500, they struggled there. Toronto was a weekend to forget for Team Penske, but otherwise they've been towards the front. And it's astounding, even with Newgarden, the failure at the car on Sunday, the fact that he's led, I think, close to 45% of the laps he's ever turned at Iowa Speedway is just insanity to me. Dominated race 1, was dominating race 2 before the failure. And the rest of his team kind of followed in sync. I'm kind of surprised with the speed that we saw out of Will Power that he did not get a win over the weekend, but Scott McLaughlin was there showing pace as well. So good weekend for Penske, but could we look back at it and say a bad weekend for Joseph Newgarden if he does indeed miss this weekend's race, which we're kind of waiting imminently as we record on Thursday to find out, because it's usually they had said Thursday he was going to be medically released or not. So we're kind of waiting for that news. I'm sure it'll come out 10 minutes after we're done recording.
Yeah, probably. That's how these things tend to work out. But overall, great weekend for Penske. And I think, look, outside of Indianapolis, they have been by far the best team pretty much every weekend. And not that that's a surprise, but Scott McLaughlin is kind of stepped up after a little midseason slump. That win at Mid-Ohio, obviously going to boost your confidence. He still runs 7th in points. So 3 drivers in the top 7, and the guy who's in 7th is only his 2nd full-time season. You got to be happy with that. You do, absolutely. And the way he started the season was tremendous, and he continues to impress, I feel, after maybe a mid-season swoon. But ready for my number 3? Yes.
Can we talk Kyle Kirkwood?
Yeah.
Because off-season, heading into this year, he was talked about being this next great talent coming into IndyCar from the road to Indy. Won almost half of the races he started in the road to Indy.
Yeah, he was dominant. Won all 3 series.
Yeah, and, he has a 15th and a 25th last weekend. He's had 1 top 10 this year. I know the asterisk some people are going to put is he races for Foyt, but the fact is he has not been able to race clean races when Foyt has been able to give him a serviceable car.
Yeah, the 15th on Saturday was the exception.
Right.
I mean, that's look, for a team like that, you take that with a rookie driver, but you go back to Long Beach where he was 10th. I mean, there's just been so many mistakes. I mean, Detroit immediately comes to mind where he made mistakes and was looking at a great weekend.
Yeah.
And mistakes got in the way.
And he's a guy that now sits 24th in points. I mean, he's out of the leader circle right now. He's out of the leader circle by 22 points. Devlin DeFrancesco, he's last among full-time rookie drivers, with DeFrancesco, Ilott, Malukas, and Lundgaard all in front of him. And I know we all anticipate his growth going into next year at Andretti. It'll be a better situation. But the fact of the matter is, if he cannot stop crashing and not finishing races, his career is going to be a short one in IndyCar. I mean, there's some urgency even going into this weekend that he races a clean race for Foyt. Yeah, I mean, they're desperate to get that leader circle money, right? Because Kellett is out of it. And look, there's some cars, so example, the 4th Andretti was like grandfathered in to the leader circle, but the Jimmy Johnson Ganassi entry is not part of the leader circle, right? At least as far as getting the funding before the season. So DeFrancesco, I don't think that entry is part of it regardless, because they lost that out in 2020. Yeah. But it's imperative that he move up into the leader circle standings for the future of that team, because I mean, it's bad. It's not good. No other way to put it. I mean, right now they're 0 for 3 in leader circle money because Calderon is no longer racing, or that car isn't, right? Yeah. And Kirkwood's 24th, Kellett's 25th. I mean, it's as bad as it can get for Kellett's actually 26th behind the 11 car. Ugh. So yeah, it's bad. It's the worst that Foyt has been, and we thought at least Kyle Kirkwood would be able to get well into the leader circle. And while you can blame some of that on Foyt and their unreliability, some of it is Kirkwood's doing. And like I said, he's not going to have a very long career in this sport if he cannot finish races.
Yeah, that's in order to finish first, you must first finish, right? Is that Rick Mears?
Yes.
So, yeah, maybe hopefully a turnaround weekend for Kyle Kirkwood because he's a great talent, but it's been a tough rookie year.
There's plenty of great talents that crashed way too much and inevitably lost their seats in this sport.
All right, my third and final takeaway this weekend, probably not going to be popular with some listeners, but we have to acknowledge it. Shout out to Romain Grosjean, leading the charge for Andretti Autosport this weekend, 7th in race 1, 9th in race 2, so double top 10. Yes, I know he's probably had a bit of a disappointing season from what we thought going into it, especially since the month of May started, but he's 14th in points. He's just behind Graham Rahal by a couple of points for 13th. I mean, he's on the cusp of getting into that top 12 range. That's not out of the question. Maybe even the top 10 if he gets some more good results. But it was a great weekend for him. And yet again, just like Gateway last year, he's excelled on a short oval.
I feel like we go back and forth with Romain Grosjean by week here, and he has a disappointing week, and we talk about how he's underperforming, and then he has a good week, and we talk about how well he's doing, and then after this weekend, we'll come back and say, well, he is underperforming. So
no, he won't.
No?
I'm calling my shots now, but
you say he's
going to be a contender for the win this weekend.
Really?
Because this is one of his best tracks.
Sure. We'll see. So credit to Grosjean. I think the biggest thing was no public drama with any of his teammates, and that goes for the entire organization for Andretti Autosport. But it was a good weekend for a guy that, like you said, had never been there and really just took what the track gave him, took what the car gave him, brought it home in one piece, and got a pair of top 10s.
Not a good weekend for the team, but a great weekend for Grosjean. And Rossi was pretty much nowhere all weekend. Colton Herta looked like he was, at least he had a shot at pole for one of the races, and then he had that engine change, never really a factor. He finished 12th in race 2, the race that he would have started up front if not for the engine change. Overall, just bad weekend for the team, but great weekend for Grosjean. And I have to point it out, they got the results.
Yeah, so kudos to Grosjean. I hope it continues. Look, I'm a Grosjean fan. I love the way he drives. I love, personally, the way he bothers other drivers. Look, these are the people you guys wanted, right? You wanted drama. You wanted people that aren't going to all get along and this and that. And then you have the same people come around and say, well, I don't like Romain Grosjean because he doesn't get along with his teammates, or he races unfairly, or this is how he always... Look, this is what we wanted, right? You didn't want cookie cutter drivers across the board in the paddock. You don't have it. And now some of you are complaining about it.
Yeah, can't have it both ways. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, what else out of Iowa?
That's our 3 things, right?
Yeah, but looking at, you brought this up, and then I kind of started thinking about it and talking about Alexander Rossi and another dismal weekend, lapped both races. I mean, he was slow as all get out on both Saturday and Sunday. And
but that was the team as a whole outside of Grosjean.
Yeah.
And they were just not
Herta
there.
was up there in the first race before he had problems.
Yeah.
So nobody was as slow as Alexander Rossi was in terms of Andretti Autosport. And I don't know if it was you or somebody else I was talking to that just asked, like where are we at with Alexander Rossi? If you take away an Indy 500 win that he won on merit, yes, but by fuel mileage, what has he done in this sport? He has 7 wins, the same amount as Colton Herta, in significantly less time. I don't know where we're at. I mean, Ryan Briscoe had more wins.
He's a James Hinchcliffe with a different personality.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Rossi has contended for championships. Now, he hasn't since 2019, but I mean, we've had guys who've contended for championships and kind of fallen off. It happens. But
I think we're at a point now where Alexander Rossi has fallen off. It's not just bad luck. It's not. I'm sorry. I'm not buying into the whole aero screen thing. You've had 3 years to figure that out. Okay. I mean,
I think we'll truly know our answer next year because He'll have the team, he'll have the car, the crew, the strategy.
Maybe. I mean, I think somebody brought it up in the mailbag on racer.com is the fact that, okay, Rossi's now going in with Pato O'Ward is the clear alpha.
Yeah. And
Rossi is basically going to be a secondary driver there. And he couldn't be more different personality-wise than Pato O'Ward. And we're not sure, let's say Felix Rosenqvist is back in the seat, for example, or Alex Palou. How does Alexander Rossi mesh with those guys? I think that's as important as anything. I just feel like right now, Alexander Rossi's best racing days are behind him. And if he is not able to hit reset and revitalize his career at McLaren, then within 2-3 years, he's not racing in this series. That's where we're at, because there's so much talent looking to break through in this series. If you go another 2 or 3 years without a win and you're 5 or 6 years removed from your last victory, you're not racing in IndyCar.
Well, we kind of saw that with James Hinchcliffe, right?
Right. And that was shorter. But, it doesn't matter how popular you are or, how much people like you and all that stuff. If you don't produce results in this sport, and it's getting more and more cutthroat, not saying it's Formula One cutthroat, but it is getting more and more in terms of qualified drivers that want to get into the series and only limited seats. If you can't produce results, you're not going to have a seat. And Alexander Rossi needs to figure it out. I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of the, bad luck and mechanicals and, the aero screen's a problem. Alexander Rossi's the problem. And if he doesn't figure it out at McLaren, then he's not going to be in this series for much longer.
So you're telling me you think it's Rossi and not the Andretti team being in disarray that's the problem?
I mean, he hasn't won in 3 years. You can't just blame the team for everything. You can't blame the aero screen for everything. In the times that he does have a competitive car, he does something to screw it up. Like, when is he going to be held responsible for his driving as opposed to just excuses?
Next season.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I'm telling you, like, it's next
year is it. Like, you need to be able to show you have consistent ability to compete, because you know what? McLaren's not going to give you a lot of rope. They're in this thing to win races and championships. And if you cannot do that, you're not going to be with McLaren for very long.
No.
I mean, I would say they have a shorter leash than almost anybody else in the paddock. I mean, maybe Penske, that's it.
We shall see. Other takeaways from Iowa, I mean, we kind of touched on it, but again, hopefully Joseph Newgarden is okay after some people reported he fainted. Some people reported he fell in the bus lot. This is well after the race, after he'd been cleared from the infield care center. He was airlifted. That was just due to traffic from people getting out of the race and the concerts.
Yeah.
And it was like a 45-minute drive otherwise to the hospital. So awaiting on his availability. Otherwise, Santino Ferrucci on standby this weekend, which quite the interesting choice, but he'll be there for the Xfinity Series. And we'll see what comes of that. Again, no real answer yet as we record Thursday afternoon. His evaluation for Newgarden, again, set for today, just no real release. I'm sure that won't come out until Friday morning. I would assume would be the update on that.
Probably. Yeah, makes sense.
Then we look at the races as a whole. The Sunday race, 812 passes, 262 for position. I thought the Saturday race had a lot more action in it personally, but
still lacked action up front.
Yes.
I mean, and NBC missed the pass for the lead in race 1 on the first round of pit stops. That's a whole nother conversation that we can get to in the future. NBC continues to show absolutely horrible judgment and when to take breaks.
To be fair,
I know you have to. I know you have to, but if a pit sequence is coming up, why would you break that? It almost like NBC looks at pit stops as worthy of missing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say they're not, especially when they're green flag pit stops with the leaders. At least wait to break till they go and then do it. Then Marshall Pruitt says IndyCar says 773 total passes took place, 332 for position. That would have been for the Saturday race. So more for position, less passes. Personally, I thought Saturday was better. Some other notes, David Malukas had a career best finish in IndyCar in race 2 as he finished 8th. Another really good run. Good run for the Coin team that day. Sato was 10th. They also qualified pretty well during the weekend as well.
Yeah, good bounce back for Sato because he was very slow on Saturday.
And Graham Rahal, Christian Lundgaard, great race 1, 9th and 10th. Great qualifying for Jack Harvey the whole weekend. Unfortunately, the results yet again not there for Harvey as he qualified top 7 both races, 18th and then 20th. The results for those. But a good Saturday, at least, for the Rahal team on a track that they weren't expected to do that well on. Sunday, unfortunately, did not go so well.
Back-to-back weekends showing some growth, right?
I guess.
I mean, other than Jack Harvey. I mean, imagine how excited Hy-Vee would be.
Well, he qualified really well.
Yeah, but then got lapped easily.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine how excited Hy-Vee would be in IndyCar if they actually had a competitive driver in their car.
Yeah, that does help.
That would help exponentially.
And to correct myself from earlier, this from IndyCar 1909, I said Simon Pagenaud at Detroit. It was not 2013, it was 2016. Will Power, first driver since Simon Pagenaud 2016 Detroit to win both pole positions on a doubleheader weekend.
Gotcha.
TV rating time, I guess we'll get into it. Not great.
Not great, Bob.
Both races on network NBC, of course, streaming on Peacock here in the States. 0.61, 941,000 viewers on Saturday, which Saturday you're always going to have a lower number. That is standard. And you were close to that million. Sunday, unfortunately, up against the Cup race that was on USA at the same time. 0.45, 719,000. And yes, you can say, well, it's way up from 2020
of course
at Iowa. But that was on NBCSN. So
yeah, right?
It more than doubled for both. But
the fact that we've not heard much of a peep out of NBC Sports PR on IndyCar numbers for, I mean, what, since Indy?
Not even Indy, really.
Before Indy is indicative of just where these numbers have been this season. This is a greater conversation for later on when we have some off weeks. But the TV numbers have been dismal lately.
And you have a theory that we will get to when we have one of those off weeks here in a couple weeks. I think we can address it and maybe even get Adam Stern on to talk about the business side. But you have a theory that makes sense to me that we'll dive into then.
Right.
That I think it does set the tone, and that could be why this year is different from last year. And there is a notable difference, and it's pretty easy. And if you want to guess, feel free to reach out to us, but it's not that complicated.
I will be absolutely shocked if the 2022 IndyCar season has 14 network races.
You mean
I will be
2023?
2023, yes. Man, time's flying.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at it on Sunday and IndyCar is on NBC and Cup is on USA at the same time, I'm wondering why they aren't flipped. Because Cup outdraws IndyCar significantly, even when it's on cable, not network. So why should IndyCar get a network date and time when it can't even get 1 million people to tune in? If I'm a businessman, that's how I'm looking at it. But we'll delve into that further into the future. It's not been good. Not been good at all.
No, it is not. All right. If you agree or disagree with us, we'd love for you to interact with us on social media. Our Twitter handle is IndyCar Podcast. On Facebook, like us, just search for New Track Record. Instagram, it is IndyCar Podcast as well. And you can email us, newtrackrecordpodcast@gmail.com, and send us your questions, comments, rants for IndyCar. You can find us on the web, newtrackrecordpodcast.com. While you're there, check out the store. We have t-shirts and stickers for sale. You can also become a patron, patreon.com/newtrackrecord. 4 different supporter tiers available for you. Thanks to Xavier and Rob for supporting us, among others. And again, it all starts with as little as $1 a month. And you can find us on your favorite podcasting platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podbean, or wherever you find your podcasts. As always, all for free. Okay, Justin, we have a ton to get to in the mailbag. Not that this is a surprise. Jimmy, fun to watch today. That was the Saturday race, and DC Soda says, save the race for me. Need to make Newgarden start from the back tomorrow. Daniel SCM 2004, what will Justin complain about?
I always find something.
You didn't have anything to complain about, though.
Out of Iowa?
With Jimmy Johnson?
No, I mean, I was impressed. Color me impressed. It was good. And he's, for him to set the trend on Saturday to race that higher line that other drivers, found on Sunday. Very impressive. I was proud. Look, I like to see Jimmy Johnson have success. I really do. I don't think he can have consistent success in IndyCar, but I don't hate Jimmy Johnson. I thought it was a great weekend for him.
All right, rate the race. We start with the Hy-Veedeals.com 250. What would you give it? This is Saturday.
7.5.
Okay, I'm going to go 8. I thought This was a good race. Okay. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I get that the action up front wasn't amazing, but the action, past the top 3, who both days, granted, checked out.
Right, yeah.
If you're looking at Newgarden, Power, and Award in whatever order they were, they checked out both days. But outside of that, the racing in the top 10 I thought was phenomenal.
The greatest thing that I love about Iowa is the pit strategies and how much the tires fall off. And NBC put a graphic up where, basically top speeds on a fresh set of tires are 170. And by the end of the stint, you're at 150. And it felt like 50 mile an hour difference with some of those drivers and going around slower traffic. Sometimes it was lap traffic unlapping themselves based on the pit sequence. So I love that type of fall off from the tires. It adds a new dimension and just another layer of things for Iowa Speedway.
A lot of responses. NK Harden gave it a 5. Watched the replay on Peacock, and what little action there was, they missed. They don't include anything that happened during commercials, even if it's side-by-side on NBC. Cut the JJ spin, Ed crash, Felix crash, missed restart where Newgarden passed Power. Also missed half the pit stops. If you take those things away like they did, all I got was a race out of the 1980s where the leader dominates most of the race. Only a couple cars are on the lead lap, and the winner takes it without any drama. DC Soda gave it an 8, almost solely because Johnson. It was great watching him go through the field. Newgarden wins again tomorrow, though I'll retroactively lower it to a 7. Hunter's Way 67 gave it an 8, despite Newgarden stomping the field at the end. Plenty of action, passing from the rest of the field, particularly Herta early on, then JJ later. Great job by Hy-Vee putting this weekend together. Zach C8771 said, hard to say once Newgarden takes the lead at Iowa, the drama is kind of sucked out. Because of the other race, I'm going to not be kind, give it a 5. It's fun to see Jimmy running up in the top 5 for a bit, though. Hunter J. Smith, 03-8. Great race, old school feel to it. Leaders slicing through lap traffic. A few years ago, they would have just been stuck. Nothing wrong with seeing a driver dominate. It's tougher to do that now than I believe any other time in IndyCar history. Vicky Lynn, 26, gave it a 9. Aside from Joseph's not unexpected dominance, a lot of good side-by-side racing, great passing. Looking at you, Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, buddy.
Jeremy from HBG, darn fun race. I'm sure there's a number for that. Daniel Essium 2004, probably a 7. Getting tired of Newgarden running away with the wins here, but the tire deg makes the show interesting. And according to Stitch, gave it a 7. Traffic and degrading tires make good racing no matter how far the leader is out in front. And Seiko Say said, okay overall, wish we had seen more strategies where people race from the back on new tires like Herta, Johnson, and Castro Neves. Sig Domer gave it a 9.
Wow.
Yeah. There are some pretty high numbers out there for some of these.
Liked it more than we did.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Finishing position that surprised you most. I mean, to me, it was Connor Daly. He struggled all weekend.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that was...
I mean, he qualified well and then just dropped like a rock both days.
Yeah, didn't really have anything as far as race pace when you look at it. Connor Daly, 19th, 48%. Jimmy Johnson, 11th, 29. Renus VK, 4th, 14. Felix Rosenquist, 26, got 9%. Yeah, Felix had that crash. Daniel Essium, 2004. I thought Connor would have done better. Real surprise to me was Grosjean in 7th. Hunter's Way 67 says another disappointment from Daly. I like him and root for him, but I just don't think he's ever going to break through for that first win. And Samuelus with a 3 in there. I really thought Daly's going to be one of the cars to beat today. Not sure what happened to him. It was surprising that he struggled because I thought this was a weekend where he could win a pole and get a top 5, and the cars just weren't there.
Wasn't there.
Demise 90 Racing says, I love Iowa. I thought the race was great. Just Newgarden's just on a next level here, though. That's not a surprise.
Nope, he tends to do that, right?
That is what he does. And We forgot to mention this. IndyCar will be at Iowa the next 3 years per Bud Dinker, the track that's from C. DeHard, Christopher DeHard. Not that is a surprise, but
good to see.
It's good to see the return. All right, looking at race number 2, how would you rate race 2?
What, I give it a 7 to the first one? I would give it a 6 probably.
I would go 6.5.
Without the Newgarden crash, it's like a 5.
Yeah, I would agree. Daniel SEM 2004 says, before Newgarden crash, I'd say it was probably a 4 or 5. After, it was around a 6. Penske cars just made it a runaway. DC Soda gave it an 8. All that was missing was some more battling at the front. Feel a bit bad that I jinxed Newgarden, but oh well. Really cool to see Johnson back up yesterday's performance as well. Hunter's Way 67, 5 or 6, kind of a snoozer today after Saturday's show. NK Harden, 6, I was driving, so I had to listen to the radio broadcast. If not for the Newgarden wreck, this race would have been bad. Maybe some people prefer tire dig races to what we saw in the early years of this track, but I don't. This rank is 2 of the worst races of the year for me. He says, I hate that I feel that way because the event itself looked amazing. Credit to Hy-Vee, RLL, and so many other people that made it happen. No track promoter has done more, but the on-track show was a letdown. Jeremy from HBG was trending a lot lower. Give it a 7.5. NCAP Team 185, give it a 9. Lots of position changes. Newgarden shockingly crashes out of the lead. Multiple cautions to bring the pack back together. Push to pass cast gave it a 10. Vicky Lynn 26, 7.5. Like Saturday's race better. Fewer cautions. The third lane was noticeably less usable with more marbles. Got it for Joseph, but happy for the guys on the podium. Hunter J. Smith gave it a 9. Just a simple, good, solid, amazingly classic short track IndyCar race. So seeing a lot higher ratings than I would have expected. Drankin 21 gave it an 8. Need a little drama at the finish. So look at some of the replies on Rate the Race. Heil Mike gave it a solid 9. If Power would have had a little more at the end, it would have been a 10. Good as a Hy-Vee man, brought back Iowa and then some. Playing spades, I'd say 8.5. I think the leader being able to run away and hide kind of took some suspense away. Absolutely loved the race. Loved the weekend.
All over the place. Some people, like, especially race 2.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest surprise.
Right.
Is that the ratings, like you said, were just all over the map for this.
It just shows that different people have different priorities on what makes a race good or not, and nothing wrong with that.
A couple other notes from Iowa. Chris McFadden, who's Dalton Kellett's left rear tire changer, he was hit during one of the pit stops. He was released from the hospital. In fact, I think they expect him back this weekend, which is crazy. Big D Kart gave the race a 3.8. With much hype, I expected more action and not an oval parade.
I didn't think it was an oval parade, but
no, I didn't.
Each his own. Up front, baby.
Yeah. People's thoughts on Santino Ferrucci getting the super sub. Elena Cat 99, I've seen far too many drivers admit to not liking the guy, so I'm guessing the issue is with his personality rather than his ability. If he can't get along with his teammates, it's difficult to justify hiring him full time. He's got skills that's undeniable. Jeremy from HBG, I kind of want him to run and win just to watch the internet burn.
I just find it fascinating that every team is eager to hire him for a one-off or to sub, but aren't interested in full time. Like if he's that bad for a team, why are you even entertaining him for one race? But yeah, that's me.
Another Rate the Race for Sunday. Phil_Barksdale gave it a 7. Happy with the result as a Pato fan. The Saturday race was the better of the two. Yeah, not a question to me. I think that was a given based on what we saw.
Yeah, sure. Likewise, I agree.
A couple of replies on Hy-Vee and, again, what to expect in the future. Demise 90 Racing says, I really hope so. It's amazing to see the effort they put into this weekend's event.
Yeah, it's going to be a multiple-year deal. You just hope that Hy-Vee sees the value in continuing to invest that much capital into the event.
People with some responses. A driver change could be on the cards for the number 29 Andretti Autosport car for next year of Devlin DeFrancesco, despite being on a multi-year deal. NK Harden says good. He's proven he isn't good enough. Hunter's Way 67. Hopefully it will be Askew. Vicky Lynn 26. I really hate these one and done deals, contract or not. Some teams are doing these days. I get AA is struggling. Giving up on a driver who hasn't performed as well as hoped in his first year is all kinds of wrong in my books, but it's not my business to run. Contracts are contracts.
And we are finding out they mean absolutely nothing.
Yes.
Or very little.
Very, very little based on what we've kind of been told and seen and just how things have gone. It's not great, but this is how it works.
This is how things go.
Some thoughts on the Palou contract situation. Chip Ganassi, this from Jenna Fryer. Chip Ganassi saying, I want to win championships. I want Alex Palou in my car, and I'm not talking to any other drivers. Nick J. Fletcher says, I imagine this is going in with Mari Povich having Chip, Alex, Zach, Renus, Ryan Hunter-Ray, and Ilott and others all on stage. You are not the driver. Thought that was great.
Yes, I would agree. I like Mari. I like trash television. To a certain extent.
You would.
The hell's that supposed to mean?
No, I'm just saying you would.
I own it.
You own it? Yeah.
I like Mari.
Yeah. You own it. That's the key. No, it's not a dig. I was just saying you would. Like you would like it.
All good.
All right. Thanks everyone for the mailbag submissions. As always, tweet us, Facebook, email, Instagram, snail mail each and every week. All right. News and notes time and several things to get to. First off, Callum Ilott renews a multiple-year partnership with the team. That is the wording from Juncos. I'm being very specific. They also do intend to enter a second car full-time for Juncos in 2023. All positive things there. Not a surprise, but still good nonetheless.
I mean, considering, Chip Ganassi potentially sniffing around Callum Ilott, other teams, doesn't sound like Ilott will be an option. But what do contracts mean? Not much.
But it's a new contract, so multi-year. So he's locked up for several years, and it's very positive. Taking a look at silly season stuff, and Marshall Pruitt had a silly season update last week. Really just the takeaway, they're F2 drivers interested in IndyCar. Brazilian Felipe Drugovich, I believe that's how you say it. New Zealand's Marcus Armstrong as well, an F2 interested. Benjamin Peterson likely headed to Foyt. That's apparently something that Marshall even says, don't be surprised if it's announced soon.
And you're going to bring a sizable amount of capital, it sounds like.
Yes. Third entry, probably not coming back, at least as a part or full-time car this season. As far as next year, kind of depends. Andretti staying at 4 cars, back to Foyt. Dalton Kellett, and this was interesting. Marshall saying, it seemed like Kellett may not return to Foyt. I mean, he wants to return, but
I know, but he's completely ineffective.
That was
for multiple years in that car.
Bit of a surprise. There's really nothing on the Ganassi side. Yes, they have Kiffin Simpson as a development driver, but he's going to be in lights with HMD. In fact, he's with lights in HMD right now. The 10 car will obviously be the key piece for Dale Coyne Racing, David Malukas, Takuma Sato. They have contracts for both of those drivers to return. Malukas has a multi-year deal, according to wearetherace.com. And Linus Lundqvist, they like to be in a third car, but we've also read that Honda's max out at 15 full season entries.
I think we're running against it. We talked about expansion, and it sounds like Honda and even to a lesser extent Chevrolet is telling IndyCar and IndyCar teams, hey, look, we're only going to support a maximum amount of X cars in the series in terms of full-time drivers, and IndyCar is approaching that number. So another hurdle in having just 2 engine manufacturers.
Yeah, Nathan Brown saying Chevy max out at 13 full season and Honda at 15. So that's where we're at. They're already at 15 at Honda currently. So not sure where the space comes from, but that's where we're at. Talking about, let's see, some changes for Iowa as far as Hy-Vee. Randy Edeker is stepping down as CEO of Hy-Vee. That's something to keep in mind.
Hopefully that doesn't impact anything going forward.
No, hopefully not. And with that, it's time to get to all the contract drama with Alex Palou, and there's been so much. A lawsuit filed by Chip Ganassi Racing. We saw the public records link. It was taken down after a few hours yesterday, but one, these aren't unheard of. This from Trackside Online. Dan Weldon sued Panther Racing in August 2010 with 5 races left in that season for unpaid contractual obligations. They settled quickly. Obviously, Ryan Hunter-Reay and Rocket Sports back, 2003 or 4? That one's been a while, and Hunter-Reay won that lawsuit against the team. There's been a lot of statements here and there. We're not going to get a lot of info from the court filings because, quite frankly, everything's sealed besides the stuff we already know, the press release and the tweets. And that's it.
Just makes things even more awkward between team and driver for the rest of the year.
I mean, it's already very awkward, but it
even
is
more so.
What it is. It's not going to change.
And I'm sure while this caught some of us off guard, it probably didn't catch Alex Palou and his people off guard. I'm sure they knew it was coming.
Yeah, and McLaren not going to pay the buyout. That would come from Palou's management team, MIM. And you just kind of wonder and hope that the management team doesn't run Palou's career into the ground. I mean, that's ultimately the question, right?
That's the hope, right? They put him in this mess. They can pay to get him out of this mess.
And the other thing that's curious, Palou's lawyers released a statement to the civil lawsuit from Chip Ganassi Racing. We are disappointed CGR would attempt to keep Alex from an opportunity to compete in Formula One, and even more so with CGR's public court filings and continued commentary to the press on this matter. Formula One, interesting.
Yeah, right. Just they're eyeing just one goal, right? And they don't care what kind of scorched earth they leave in the path.
Yeah, that is the issue. Other notes, Jamie Chadwick considering Indy Lights for 2023 from FormulaScout.com. That would be a very welcome addition to the series, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree.
She's done all she could in that series, and honestly, I think she needs a new challenge that will actually challenge her in a better series.
I would agree. I mean, back-to-back, was it Formula W? Is that what it's called?
W Series,
W Series, yeah. So it'd be good. And anytime you can get diversity in the road to Indy is good.
2024 hybrid IndyCar engine testing pushed to the off-season.
Problems with it.
Yes, Marshall Pruitt, Racer.com reporting that. Look, they have plenty of time, so I guess it's nothing to panic about, but this is the second time post-pandemic that we've had this pushback.
Well, I mean, they had been testing it and realized that some things were going wrong technically involving engine parts. That's all I really understand. But this is why you start this process so early, is to work out the kinks.
And related to IndyCar, but IMS will have an announcement Friday morning. I am told that will be for an IMSA race next year, just for clarification, because that's been rumored for a couple of weeks, and that's the update. All right, time for our race weekend preview. 3 key stats from Chad 200 for the Gallagher Grand Prix at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Power, 5 wins, 6 poles, 341 laps led. No other drivers more than 81. Dixon, last 5 starting spots, 12th, 15th, 16th, 26th, 21st. 3 laps led, so he struggled here. Now, he did get a podium back in, 2018. Ray Hall, most top 10 finishes all time, plus 75 positions last 10 races there.
And I say this, I love IndyCar. This is the least exciting race of the year for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we're at the road course again, and you can spin it with NASCAR there and blah, blah, blah. It's just it's the least exciting. It's got the least amount of hype, in my opinion.
Let's get it out of the way quick then.
Yeah, let's
prediction for the winner.
Move on. I will take this weekend Scott Dixon.
Wow. So you say he's going to beat that trend?
Yes.
I'm going to go Will Power because that's the easy pick.
You would. It worked out last week.
Schedule for the weekend: Friday practice session 9:30 to 11 Eastern in the morning. In Peacock, IndyCar Live, IndyCar Radio. Then qualifying 1 to 2:15 in the afternoon Eastern. Same outlets. They'll have a warm-up on Saturday, 8:15 to 8:45. Pretty early in the morning. And then the race, 12 to 3 o'clock, the TV window on NBC. It's not listed on the website as being on Peacock. I'm sure it's on Peacock, though. That's got to be
has to be.
It's got to be a mix-up. And then the green flag, approximately 12:25, I believe, for this weekend, roughly. So that is the schedule for the weekend. All right, couple other notes to get to. Sage Karam, 20th place finish at Pocono in the Xfinity race last weekend as he returned there for the first time since the 2015 IndyCar race, the tragic accident involving Justin Wilson. So a great run for him. And then this from Jenna Fryer. I had actually heard this a few weeks ago, but Bobby Rahal told Jenna that doctors said he suffered a heart attack and had some complete blockage back on May 5th. He discovered during a routine physical, triple bypass on June 6th. So it's been back a couple of races since then. But good to see that he's okay and doing well.
Absolutely.
All
Good
right.
to see.
Tweet of the week.
Just one,
but it was really good. From R. Cole. Did Alex sign another contract? That in reply to the Devlin DeFrancesco Andretti Autosport article that Andretti may move forward. I thought that was really funny.
It's going to be the gift that keeps on giving.
All right. Random split era driver of the week time.
Okay, so we're up against it recording, so we're not going to delve into a particular driver this week. I'm just telling you, we're doing research on the 2005 Champ Car season. It's going to easily give us another 3 months of random split era drivers of the week. So that's something to look forward to as we go in. Do you remember in 2005, the last race of the season in 2005 for Champ Car?
Was it like in Mexico?
It was Mexico City.
Wow.
Yes. And of course, who won?
Bourdais,
part of his 4 straight.
Easy guess.
And the rookie of the year, you'll never get.
Who was it?
Timo Glock.
Oh, I remember Timo Glock. He raced an F1.
Did he really?
Yeah. Timo Glock. Wow.
He finished 10th in the Drivers' Championship in late 2000s. But anyway, that's just a sneak preview of some of the guys we're going to delve into starting next week. The 2005 Champ Car season, a treasure trove of random drivers of the week.
So Timo Glock will be our first edition.
Yeah, we'll roll with Timo next week. We'll delve into Timo's background.
All right. Well, for Justin Kinney and for Nick Yeoman, I am Caleb Hatch. Thanks for joining us on another edition of New Track Record Podcast.
Podcasts by Federated Media.